While Churchill commanded nations, Tommy Shelby ruled the streets, yet both men mastered the same dark art of power. These 5 tactical power moves separated them from ordinary leaders and created legends. In the shadowy realm of power politics, strategic ruthlessness separates the victorious from the vanquished. Both Winston Churchill and Tommy Shelby mastered this dark art with terrifying precision. Calculated risk was their first weapon. Churchill willingly sacrificed peripheral battles, concentrating forces where victory mattered most for the greater war effort. Similarly, Tommy Shelby coldly severed personal relationships that hindered his business empire. From family members to lovers, all became expendable pieces on his chessboard of ambition. Both men understood that attachment was weakness, sacrifice was strength. Their second weapon? Information dominance. Churchill created the most sophisticated intelligence apparatus of his time, leveraging spy networks across Europe to anticipate Hitler's moves. In Birmingham's criminal underworld, Tommy built an equally impressive web of informants. Bartenders, police officers, prostitutes, all feeding him valuable secrets. Both men understood that knowledge wasn't just power, it was survival. Perhaps most chilling was their moral flexibility. Churchill authorized the bombing of civilian areas to break enemy morale, decisions that haunt history books. Tommy orchestrated assassinations and political manipulations with cold precision. Both crossed ethical boundaries that ordinary men wouldn't dare approach. Yet both justified these actions as necessary evils in service of a greater purpose. Churchill for national survival, Tommy for family prosperity. The question remains, in a world of wolves, can true power exist without ruthlessness? Welcome to the battlefield of the mind. In Section 3, we explore how history's most formidable leaders mastered psychological warfare. Churchill weaponized communication through his radio addresses, his voice becoming Britain's backbone during its darkest hour. His words were artillery shells fired across airwaves, landing in the hearts of millions. Tommy Shelby, conversely, wielded silence like a blade. His calculated pauses and precisely delivered threats created a vacuum that enemies filled with their own fears. Two opposite approaches sown thunderous, one restrained, both devastatingly effective. In enemy management, we see stark contrasts in philosophy. Churchill faced Hitler with unwavering directness, refusing to appease or negotiate with evil. Tommy, the chess player, sometimes transformed enemies into allies when strategically advantageous. One stood firm on moral ground. The other shifted alliances like quicksand beneath his opponent's feet. Perhaps most revealing is how both men harnessed their demons. Churchill's depression, his black dog, fueled his resilience rather than consuming it. Tommy's war-torn psyche and PTSD flashbacks didn't diminish him, but sharpened his edge. These weren't merely men who overcame weakness, they alchemized psychological damage into power. Their internal battles prepared them for external wars that defined generations. In the psychological warfare playbook, the most dangerous weapon is not the one in your hand, but the one in your mind. In the game of power, the ultimate victory goes not to those who merely win battles, but to those who control how history remembers them. Churchill understood this better than most. After leading Britain through its darkest hour, he devoted decades to writing his own version of events, producing 6 volumes on World War II alone. His prolific writing earned him not just a Nobel Prize for literature, but ensured his perspective became the official record. Tommy Shelby, operating in shadows rather than spotlights, controlled his narrative through different means: strategic intimidation of journalists, carefully planted stories, and the calculated myth-making that transformed the Peaky Blinders from street thugs to legendary figures in Birmingham. Both men looked beyond their own legacies to ensure their influence outlasted their lives. Churchill meticulously cultivated political heirs who would carry forward his vision of Britain and its place in the world. Tommy, ever the pragmatist, built the Shelby Company Limited as a complex family enterprise, binding blood relatives and chosen allies into an organization that could withstand the loss of any single member, even himself. Their succession planning revealed fundamentally different views of power: institutional versus familial, public versus private. This brings us to the ultimate question that haunts both legacies. Were Churchill and Tommy great men who sometimes did terrible things, or terrible men who achieved moments of greatness? Churchill's strategic brilliance saved democracy, yet his colonial decisions caused suffering for millions. Tommy's rise from the gutter to Parliament created opportunities for his community, yet was built on a foundation of violence and bloodshed. Their contradictory legacies challenge our understanding of leadership ethics and force us to confront uncomfortable truths that history's most impactful figures often defy simple moral categorization. Perhaps the real power tactic they share is forcing us to question whether the ends truly justify the means. The line between legitimacy and criminality is often thinner than we imagine. Churchill and Tommy Shelby exemplify this paradox perfectly. Churchill navigated the complex machinery of British politics, while Tommy mastered the underworld's shadow economy. Yet both men shared a remarkable ability to understand their respective systems and bend the rules to their advantage. They knew when to play by the book and precisely when to rewrite it. Legitimacy, history teaches us, is often secured through results rather than methods. Churchill's controversial decisions, from the disastrous Gallipoli campaign to the bombing of Dresden, were ultimately overshadowed by his leadership during Britain's darkest hour. Similarly, Tommy Shelby's criminal enterprises gradually earned reluctant respect from legitimate society as they generated jobs and economic growth in post-war Birmingham. Both men understood that power, once proven effective, tends to legitimize itself. Perhaps most fascinating is how both transformed from outsiders to insiders. Churchill wandered the political wilderness for years before becoming Britain's wartime savior. Tommy evolved from street thug to member of parliament. Their journeys reveal the fluid nature of power hierarchy, show yesterday's criminal can become today's statesman, how the outcast can rise to define the very establishment they once opposed. In this paradox lies a profound truth. Power's legitimacy is rarely absolute, but rather constructed through narrative, results, and the passage of time. They were men forged in the fires of their time, shaped by tragedy and circumstance, yet destined to alter history's course. Winston Churchill and Thomas Shelby, two leaders molded by the brutal machinery of World War I. For Churchill, the disastrous Gallipoli campaign of 1915 nearly shattered his political career, forcing him from the Admiralty into the wilderness of near obscurity. For Tommy Shelby, it was the mud-filled trenches where he served as a tunneler, digging beneath enemy lines, the trauma etching permanent scars on his psyche. Neither man sought leadership. Both were thrust into it. They emerged from different worlds. Churchill born into aristocratic privilege, his path to power smoothed by family connections and inherited status. Tommy clawed his way up from Birmingham's industrial slums, where survival meant fighting for every opportunity, every advantage, every breath. This class divide shaped their approach to power. Churchill navigated established institutions, while Tommy built his empire outside them, using whatever means necessary. Yet both understood the power of image. Churchill carefully crafted his public persona's bulldog stance, ever-present cigar, and rousing rhetoric that inspired a nation facing its darkest hour. Tommy weaponized his appearance with equal precision, the razor blades sewn into his cap, the ice-cold stare, and calculated silence that struck fear into enemies. These were not mere affectations, but tactical choices, masks worn by reluctant leaders who recognized that in their dangerous worlds, perception was as powerful as reality. Whether you're a Shelby or a Churchill, true power lies not in domination, but in strategic resilience. Master these tactics, and you'll navigate life's battlefields with the calculated precision of history's most formidable leaders. The game of power continues. Subscribe to RockVein now and comment which tactic you'll adopt from these dangerous minds. Hit that notification bell to arm yourself with more strategic wisdom that history's most powerful players would envy.